Thank you all for coming today. We have started yesterday and continuing through tomorrow the process of a 2.5-day design charrette for the urban growth master plan. We started yesterday, started meeting with the public and property owners, and today we're continuing that. We're going to have another presentation for what we went over yesterday, and then I think this whole event will culminate tomorrow night at 5 o'clock out at the Whitaker YMCA for a festival, sort of public community get-together to take a look at the same work that's being shown and collaborated on through this event. So we appreciate this afternoon the mayor coming to say a few words to us, and then we'll turn it over to the consultant team. But appreciate those of you coming, those of you watching on GTV or live streaming. We appreciate you coming out. But right now, we'll turn it over to Mayor Gordon.
Thank you very much. It's great to see this crowd here. Now, a lot of you I know from other places, right? So thank you for coming, and I have a few things I want to say about this. As many of you know, in 2023, our Urban County Council approved the 2023 Comprehensive Plan goals and objectives. That is their job in the comprehensive planning process to approve those goals and objectives. And that included direction to our city's planning folks to include an expansion of the boundary, the growth boundary, by 2,800 acres. And so the reason we're here today, I think, is what's next, right? And many of you saw the renderings out in the lobby, which are kind of a first step. So the next step to all of this is master planning. And here in Lexington, as many of you know, we believe in intentional planning. We don't like things to just happen here and there. We like it to be intentional. So what's envisioned with this master plan is a variety of housing needs that will be housing that will be built in the expansion area, as well as economic development will be built in the expansion area. And to do these things, we always think it's important to have input from the public. Public input is always really wanted, welcomed, and important. So our city employees, alongside many of our community partners, have been meeting with property owners, interest groups, interested residents to consider exactly what the framework for development will be. You know, this is it's brand new land, most of it. We've got a couple places where it's already developed, but we're going to, that will be upgraded with new planning. And so once completed, this master plan is going to help our planning team as they begin to design the roads, the trails, bike, pedestrian trails, greenways, conservation land, all those sorts of things. So today's workshop is a rather unique opportunity for you to share your ideas for what should be in this newly planned land. As many of you know, the last real expansion of our boundary was 1996. So you get to be in on this current one. So thank you for being here. It's really important that you're here, and I appreciate each and every one of you. Thanks so much, and thanks, Chris. You're in the shadows now. I can't see a thing over there. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. So my name is Chris Taylor. I'm the manager for long-range planning for the city of Lexington, and the people presenting to you today are going to be from the consultant team. It'll be Sam Castro and Tom Walsh from TSW Design. They'll go over the initial concepts, and they'll go over design principles, and then Andrea Cull from Gresham Smith will go over transportation and connectivity as an aspect of the plan and where we are right now. But with that, our staff will be around for questions afterwards out in the lobby where the drawings are, as well as the consultant team. But at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Sam Castro from TSW to get us started.
Okay. I'm actually going to stand on this side of the podium so I can see the screen a little better. Good afternoon, everybody. Like Chris said, my name is Samantha Castro. I'm an urban designer and the Lexington office lead for TSW. We're a planning, architecture, and landscape architecture firm based out of Atlanta, but we have a Lexington office. And as Chris said, we were brought in, and our project officially kicked off November 1st. So we have a year to kind of bring this vision forward, and to help move along this process. Like I said, I'm with TSW, and so is Tom. He'll be speaking. We also have Andrea, who's with Gresham Smith. They're handling the transportation and infrastructure piece. We also have South Face, which is our sustainability consultant, as part of the 2045 Imagine Lexington Comprehensive Plan. There was a big push towards sustainability and long-term vision for that. So obviously, any future growth is going to be, critically intertwined with the idea of how we can incorporate more sustainability into these efforts. We also have Partners for Economic Solutions. There are market and economic analysts. They're not here today, but we have a really great market analysis that they did that you can find on our website. And I suggest you all go read it. It's an interesting read. I'll try and cover highlights of it in a little bit here. And then last but not least, of course, is Civic Lex. I'm sure many of you, found out about this through Civic Lex's newsletter or some of their engagement, but they are our public outreach specialists. So where we are in the process, like I said, we have a year to complete what we're doing here. So far to date, we've kind of worked through part one. We've gathered information. We've talked to just a ton of folks in the government, key stakeholders, property owners, developers, neighbors. And that's all leading us into part two. You saw out in the hallway, and we'll go through them, our very initial first blush at concepts for these areas. And then it's our task over the next weeks to months to sort of finesse those and refine those. But obviously, whenever we do these sorts of master plans, we're master planning other people's land. So really, we are just creating a vision that the community and the landowners and the city can buy into, and that will hopefully project us forward, the next few decades, and we can hold fast to that vision. And then finally, this part three, I like to call the carrots and sticks piece of what we're doing. So we're trying to figure out, in terms of the sticks, what. We've set out this vision, but how do we achieve that, and how do we ensure that it stays that way long term? And so we have to do that through regulatory approaches, through the wording that ends up in our zoning code and our subdivision regulations. But then there's also the carrot piece to it. We want to encourage developers to build like we're showing in these master plans, and we do that by helping them pay for the infrastructure that goes out there. Roads are expensive, infrastructure, stormwater, that's all very expensive. So how do we help relieve some of that burden of the cost of building development? So little backstory, a little history. I'm sure you all are fairly well versed, but just as a reminder, Lexington has the first urban growth boundary in the country. It was started in 1958, and it was really created to help the city minimize cost and focus their infrastructure internally, and keep it close and compact so that we weren't sprawling, and then also to help preserve the land that makes Lexington so unique, makes the bluegrass region so unique. So to preserve those farms outside of the urban growth boundary. And as you can see over time, we get different ideas of where things should go, and we expand and we can contract the boundary. And then, as the mayor said, in 1996, we had our last big expansion. So, that was over 25 years ago. to put it into context, that is really the areas around like Childsburg, the Childsburg neighborhood, and then the area along, Polo Club out there. But there's still quite a bit of land up off Newtown Pike, down by Tate's Creek, that is still yet to be developed. So, when we talk about trying to fill those needs for new housing units, we're not just thinking about doing it in these new expansion areas, but we still have land yet to be used, and of course infill to think about. We've got a few more tweaks just to the boundary, just to clean things up. But then, now we're moving forward. So what is this vision, and what is it for the next 20 years? So what we're showing you, none of this is really, hardly any of this is, you're going to see shovels in the ground, next week or even the next year, 2 years, 5 years probably. But what we're trying to do is set up this vision so that when the members of planning staff that you saw up here are no longer in their positions, that the vision that's here still stays true to what it is. So as part of this vision process, it's really important for us to keep the sort of 5 big tenets from the comprehensive plan always in our minds. So that's talking about neighborhoods and how we build those and make them thriving places. How we get really good transportation and circulation and roadways in there, rather than just a series of cul-de-sacs that don't go anywhere. How do we protect the environment? I think one of our main focuses as we move forward, and hopefully you're starting to see it, is that we have a lot of natural features here in Lexington. Lots of streams, lots of what we call karst, so potential sinkholes, lots of topography, rolling hills, and it's working with that and using those to think about those as amenity features, as green space, as possible places where we have bikes and pedestrian access. It's using them as amenities instead of putting our backs to them. Promoting social and racial equity. Obviously, a big part of the task of us moving forward was talking about affordable and attainable housing, and really just making these neighborhoods someplace for everyone, not just a certain price point of folks that can afford it. And then last but not least is jobs and prosperity. So thinking of these as holistic places. So you all saw kind of they're very bubbly frameworks, we call them, that are out there, but really over, kind of the course of these 2.5 days, and then, like I said, into the next few weeks, we're really refining these concept plans into something that looks like something you all probably are more familiar with. So, a series of roadways with street trees along them, or parks, or potential housing types. Like here, we're showing some townhouses. Just to give some examples, some starting points of what these concepts could look like. So let's get into some of the details. So like the mayor said, back in October of 2023, it was recommended to bring in these 5 areas. So area 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Really, it adds up to 3 distinct areas of growth on the edges of our city in different directions. So let's start by talking about Area 1. Area 1 is off Parker's Mill, Man o' War. We have Cardinal Run Park South and the new Cardinal Run Park North that's up here, and then of course the Beaumont neighborhood right up against it. Currently, the area is really just being used as pasture land, so that's what you see in yellow there. One fairly large horse farm. What is interesting / challenging about this particular site is that there is a lot of, what we call karst features here. And so whenever we see what could be a karst feature on a map, it doesn't necessarily mean that there is a sinkhole out there, but there's the potential for a sinkhole. And so that's the sort of thing that, obviously you do not want to put houses on top of. So you'll see in our future concepts that we're sort of trying to avoid those areas. But in general, there's still a lot of land to work with, and anything that's in that white, green, yellow really just talks about it being, a kind of gently rolling hillside, which is really great for us as urban designers to work with, because it allows us to put in really interesting neighborhoods that don't feel like you've completely flattened out a site and everything feels the same. It gives you something to work with and makes the site more interesting. In terms of our motor traffic, our vehicular traffic, we are never surprised. These little pink dots are crashes. We're never really surprised to see crashes at any of our major intersections. That's not surprising. What I think is interesting, or not interesting, surprising I would say, is all of these pink crash points along Parker's Mill. So what that starts to say to us is we need to look at that. We need to look at perhaps improving it. Anyone that's driven that section knows it's pretty narrow through there. There isn't much of a curb or a shoulder to deal with. So, if you run off the road, you're running off the road. Also, I don't know about anybody else, but when I'm driving through there, it's really beautiful land. So you kind of end up not looking maybe at the person in front of you who's coming up to the light. But it's also really important to note that while these are the current numbers of average daily trips that come through here, obviously with the expansion of a major new park up here, anything like that would mean that, we get additional trips on there that we have kind of yet to be able to factor in. So those are just some things to consider in the future. When we talk about multimodal, that's a very jargony word for us planners, but we're talking about transit, so Lextran, but we're also talking about bicycles, pedestrians, in growing cases, golf carts, and how those folks are moving through neighborhoods not in a personal vehicle. This area is tricky in terms of transit. There isn't a lot of transit that's getting nearby, but it is very well served by a well-used trail and sidewalk network that goes through the Beaumont neighborhood. So that is a real advantage in this case, something to tap into in the future. Back in December, we had an initial engagement event over at the Gray Line Station, and we asked folks, if you had a pie, a pie to represent the area, what piece of the pie, how big pieces of the pie would be set aside for residential, for the environment, and for kind of retail, commercial jobs. And so kind of in this area, we found pretty resoundingly that people wanted to mostly just see a lot of residential. So in our minds, that's, sort of they were comfortable with the idea of the continuation of the adjacent neighborhoods and what that could look like. So moving on to Area 2. So this is in the northwest side of the city. So we have Winchester Road. Northeast. Yes, thank you. We have Winchester Road. We have Polo Club, where it currently, tees into Winchester. Hume Road is right here. And then, of course, I-75 wraps around with 64. So this site is really our largest site, but it's also one of our most constrained sites because, we've got farmland on one side, and then the highway sort of surrounding the edges on the other side. So we're having to think about how we access this site. Again, you'll see a lot of yellow and green, so lots of existing farmland, whether that's, horse pastures or rotating crops. And then of course, you can kind of start to see it here, but there's an existing single-family neighborhood here along Hume Road that that we're also trying to be sensitive towards. Again, we're seeing, nice rolling hills, which is, what we like, kind of ideal for our work. And you'll also see the sort of confluence of two streams that are coming in here. And so we need to be very conscious of the floodplains that exist with those two. And like I said, thinking of those as an amenity and not something that we're turning our back towards. For traffic, unsurprisingly, we've got, like I said, crashes at the major signalized intersection. We also are seeing a lot of crashes here at the on-ramp and then at Hume Road. If any of you have tried to make that left from Hume Road onto Winchester, it's sort of a, you're going at your own risk for sure. So there are plans currently to realign Hume Road and bring it into a piece of the property that is, just across the street. And so we're working sort of in those parameters to think about our transportation network. Again, multimodal. So this area is really interesting to me because it's the closest we get to transit, to existing transit service. So I think that it has a lot of opportunity to get Lextran to, just come on the other side of 75 and circulate within this neighborhood. When we spoke to them, there's also some talks in the works to serve, the new Baptist Health site. And again, talking about traffic, we're sort of in a wait and see on what that continued growth around the Baptist Health site and around the middle school and all that development out there, what that ends up looking like for the amount of cars that are on the road there. To me, what this pie is saying is that, there's farmland out there. People want to see, some of that kept. There's also the floodplains that I think people were concerned about. So I think that's why we're seeing a higher slice of that pie for the environment. Moving over to the east, this is Area 3. So this is 8th and Spoonsboro Road, I-75. Here's Brenda Cowan and Hayes Middle, and then Hayes Boulevard is up here at the top in the Childsburg neighborhood. And I'm going to run through 3, 4, and 5 because they're kind of they're sharing a lot of similarities. So Canebrake, we're going to kind of tilt our heads so that we could fit it in. But here's 8th and Spoonsboro. Here's the area we were just talking about, and then here's Canebrake Drive. Not many people have driven along it, or would have had a reason to because it dead ends. But here is Todd's Road. And then last but not least is Area 5. I want to give special attention. So this is the Blue Sky Parkway, the industrial area. And while we are counting that towards the overall 2,800 square feet number or 2,800 acre number that we were given, it is going to be looked at in a future small area plan, partly just because that's such a different study. A study of existing industrial land is a very different study than a master plan for what we call greenfields or areas that have never been developed. So that's we're going to put a pin in that, and the Division of Planning will come back to that. But in other words, this we're looking at really the four corners of the interchange. This is the new site for the soccer stadium. The existing soccer fields are here, just outside of the area that we're looking at to be included. So, in terms of looking at how the land is being used, Again, we're seeing a lot of pasture land, and then some highly developed areas. This kind of pink that you're seeing here, I think is coming about just because the land has been sort of heavily used, so it's not showing up as quite as lush when they do, this is all done from very high level, many thousands of feet view in GIS. When we look at the topography, again, we're seeing a lot of rolling hills, but we're also starting to see some fairly steep topography in here. And so those areas that are kind of popping up there in the red color start to tell us that that land starts to become a little bit too steep to build on comfortably. And areas that we don't want to disturb also because they help with the natural drainage systems and help move that water down to our streams and out and away. Unsurprisingly, we're seeing, some crashes here all around the interchange. What else is interesting is, Hayes Boulevard here, it really sees quite a lot of traffic, especially at peak times. And so that's part of the reason why the state has already, begun they're through their plan phase, and I think you'll start to see actual road work out there soon for the R, what they're calling R cuts. So that's a fancy way of saying that it'll be a series of medians and sort of a way to restrict left-hand movements, left-hand turns, so that you'll see less of your kind of standard signalized intersections, but more trying to get more of a free flow in there and hopefully encourage more traffic movement, but also create a safer way to move along Richmond Road and 8th and Spoonsboro. And so currently that's planned to come out to Hayes or to the school, I think. But now they're in kind of the initial phases of bringing it all the way out to the soccer stadium site. So that's really important for us in terms of how we will be accessing these sites. Multimodal out here, it's a little bleak. Transit, the nearest transit is quite far away. And then, I would say that one of our biggest lessons learned from the previous expansion plan was that we can't do what we did with the Childsburg neighborhood. All of these neighborhoods, if you get in close to them, are end in cul-de-sacs. So there's no way to connect one neighborhood to the other. So think of this all as just an edge that is really almost impenetrable. There's a couple places we think we can get through with some bicycle and pedestrian paths, maybe, but there's no way we're putting cars through there. So that makes it hard for transit also to come through. While we see, sort of a vibrant sidewalk network here and some trail network, it will be very hard for us to connect through and get to those pieces. And then obviously all of this stuff is quite far away from anything existing. And then this kind of had equal splits of jobs, neighborhood, environment. So the market potential. So this is stuff that I will fully admit is not my, this isn't necessarily my cup of, not my cup of tea, my area of expertise, I should say. So I'm gonna refer to some notes here, which I hope you all don't mind. Oops, let me go back. So one thing that that our market analysts found, and I'm sure you've heard these numbers actually from lots of sources, from Fayette Alliance, from CommerceLex, our projected growth here in Lexington is putting us to, on the trajectory to need about 25,000 more households, or to get 25,000 more households over the next 20 years, which means we need 25,000 more houses or dwelling units of some sort over the next 20 years. So how and where do those go? Our existing housing stock is made up of a vast majority of single-family detached houses. So very suburban living in a lot of cases. We've got some townhouse product and then some multifamily product, but this is not, this is not sort of the mix that we are typically seeing cities that are growing trying to trend towards. Another kind of interesting thing that we found is that our number of building permits continues to sort of keep pace. But what's interesting is the number of apartment building permits is increasing at a faster rate than our single family. So what that tells us is that that's the type of development that we are finding a lot more people are wanting to see. So when we talk about housing affordability, we talk about affordability means that you're not spending over 30% of your monthly income on household expenses. So that includes utilities and rent and your mortgage or whatever. Anything over 30% means that you are now in that cost-burdened category. So it's getting harder and harder for you to make ends meet. So if we use a family of three as an example, so the Lexington area median income is $84,000 a year for a family of three. So now imagine that maybe your family of three is actually a single earner. So maybe it's a single mother with 2 kids instead. So now she's squeaking by with about $40,000 a year, which is putting her, roughly at the 50% area median income. So if you calculate what's affordable, what she's looking at is about $1,060 a month that she can spend in rent and utilities. But then you start to realize that the average rent in Lexington, not including utilities a month, is $1,196. So that starts to really tell us that there's a gap. There's a gap in who we're serving and how we're serving. This is showing people that are at 80% AMI, so even doing a little better off. So a 3-person household making around $64,000 a year, but still 19%, almost 20% of the homeowners are severely cost burdened. So that means they're spending over 50% every month on rent or on their mortgage plus utilities. And then it gets even tougher for renters. A third are really struggling to make ends meet. So shifting a little bit, what we are seeing too in the market is that people want variety. They want options. Kind of gone are the days where everybody wants the big yard with the picket fence and the, McMansion house. A lot more people are wanting to continue to rent much later in life. A lot of empty nesters are wanting to move out of their big houses and go back to rentals, or maybe go back to owning a small townhouse somewhere. So it's really important to provide that variety, but provide all those different types of things, not as set-aside pieces away from everything, but all within a walkable environment. And with any sort of walkable environment, we really start looking at density and sort of upping density. So, I know density scares a lot of folks, but when we talk about walkable with a lot of different types of housing variety, we can also be thinking about some of our favorite neighborhoods like Kenwick or Ashland or Chevy Chase. The economics folks also looked at other markets and what they were seeing. Obviously, we've all heard the downturn in the office market. And what we're finding in other places that we're working at is Oftentimes, folks are giving up the leases on the really big spaces that they have in, maybe office parks, and they're downsizing to be, within more walkable communities, so that, their workers that are coming in and maybe are working from home 2 days a week, when they come in to work, can get the things done they need to during their lunch break. So they're going out and getting their dry cleaning done, running to the post office, dropping their kids off at daycare without having to get in their car. For industrial, we really think of this more at a regional scale. And while Lexington is getting a good chunk of that, much of that is being focused in areas that are very much what we call shovel ready, or well suited to industrial. So that's areas like Coldstream, Citation, even Blue Sky, where we've already focused and prepared for industrial. Other than that, our land in Lexington is very expensive. It's a little too expensive for most industrial to want to come into. When we talk about retail, and this time I'm talking about sort of big retail centers. Our Fayette County is sort of, we are well suited for, we've got a lot of options in terms of where we already have retail that is good and thriving and has good turnover rates. Nicholasville Road, Hamburg, those types of areas, Beaumont, have existing retail centers, and retail likes to be near other retail. The other thing that we have to remember is retail and commercial follows rooftops. It doesn't usually lead rooftops. So it's usually an if you build it, it may come situation. So for most of these expansion areas, what we're trying to show is we're being a little bit conservative on the retail side and saying that for the most part, we're seeing neighborhood serving retail. So what would you find in your sort of downtown core? So our approach, we want to always keep in mind that we have these 5 tenets that we have to fall back on, that we have to think about. Neighborhoods, transportation, environment, jobs, equity. And we have to make sure that the frameworks that we're showing are sort of responding to each of those. I'm going to turn it over to Tom.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tom Walsh with TSW out of Atlanta, Georgia. I'm one of the founding principals of the firm. And we're very gratified to be working on this project. And we thank the mayor and any council people that have shown up, as well as the citizens, to engage in this process. Because as Samantha said, we thrive on engagement and talking to our clients and having a collaborative experience. We want to make sure you all have the input that is there. I want to give you a little, let's move a little out of Lexington for a while and give you a little larger context about what's going on in the country. And really what I've thought about the last couple of days, the South is leading the way in walkable communities. I've been designing these communities since 1987. The first project I worked on was Harbortown in Memphis, Tennessee. And it's one of the first walkable communities other than Kentlands up in Gaithersburg, Maryland, that were developed where you had the mixed use, the residential, commercial. And I remember Henry Turley, who was the developer. We didn't build the commercial because this was on Mud Island, which was the first housing to be developed in over 100 years in downtown Memphis. And I asked him, why are we doing the commercial? And he says, well, there's no rooftops. Nobody's going to come here. So he waited 10 years until his development was almost fully developed, and as well as other developers came on the island and developed. And in that case, when he opened Miss Cordelia's, which was named after his mother, which was a great little grocery store, it was a huge success. So one of the things we found is that if you create these mixed-use communities, and especially in the South, where everybody's been on the leading edge of that, and you create these communities, people really want to be in those environments. And I'm fascinated because I worked out of Princeton office for a number of years, and the only time I ever saw people interested in those walkable communities because they felt they already had them. They were they thought they were ahead of us, and truly they weren't. And Christie Whitman, the governor of New Jersey, had us do a series of workshops all through these townships. And one did a standard subdivision, one did a walkable community, and one did a sort of a conservation community. And inevitably, in all these towns, they always picked mine. I was the winner most of the time, so I was very excited because people wanted that environment up there, and so that really changed New Jersey's direction in the way they started thinking about how communities should be implemented. And so that was back in the mid '90s that we did that. So that was sort of an eye opener for me. What's interesting, we're in Tulsa. We have an office in Tulsa. We just finished doing a 5,000 acre project for the city of Tulsa for a client. And it's going to be literally a new town. It'll be a new entity. It's on the edges of Tulsa. There'll be about 60,000 people ultimately living there. It'll be it's a 50-year plan. But what's exciting about it, in Tulsa or in Oklahoma, they have already a standard grid system of section roads. So all the section roads go through this property as well as other roads. So we've created this very porous road system as opposed to having a cul-de-sac community. So you don't clog up all the streets. And that was one of the great mistakes we made in America after World War II, coming out of out of Harvard and Yale and so forth. These people that had been in Germany and in France were teaching everyone to do these communities where you did the collector road and the car would come out there and you'd have these closed communities. And nobody thought about the induced demand as those grow, how those roads could expand. And now it's caused a lot of problems. So we're trying to make it so we have a more porous road system throughout our different projects, and that's what you're going to see today when Sam's going to talk a little bit about the framework plans in a few minutes, and you'll see that porous road system, and we're also going to talk about it from a transportation. That's critical to this plan. We have to have that connectivity throughout this process. If we don't have that, we're going to fail. And I say that from the standpoint that I hope that when we see this development go through, it was 30 years for the last one that you did. I hope this is 70 years because we're creating this general density component. We're creating more of towns as opposed to subdivisions. So people tend to take less trips. They tend to stay within their community. If you can get in your walk or if you can get in a golf cart or on your bike and go to the local neighborhood center, that's what you're going to do. You're not going to go out further than that except on special occasions. So. And we've seen that over the last 30 years how that's developed. So this is very exciting. One last thing, there was a project that we were working on. It's called Johns Creek in Atlanta, and they have a north-south, east-west road system. This is the most wealthy part of Atlanta. All the football players live out there. The basketball players, baseball players all have these residential. But when in 1985, it was much like the land you see here. It was all farmland, just that one little road. And every single development is a gated, closed community. And so only way they can go anywhere is to get on those two main roads if they want to leave their area. 80% of the commutes to that road are non-Johns Creek residences. So you can imagine the consternation these people are having, that they feel like they're trapped because once they get in there, it takes an hour and a half to get out of Johns Creek because the roads are so clogged up and there's no possible expand. There are already 6 lanes. There are 3 lanes on each side. So to get to a 7 lane, you're almost at an interstate level. So they're really, and they were asking us, begging us to solve the problem. And the only thing we could come up with was to start taking a lot of their commercial neighborhood areas that were marginal and creating more mixed-use communities so the people in Johns Creek could easily get to those areas as opposed to having to leave Johns Creek. So it's a lesson learned that we're trying to at least push out into the communities and also to you all. So up this is what we brought today. That's out what you're looking outside. These are the framework plans. And then we get to more of a system where we're trying to connect into the land that surrounds it. You know, any place that we can connect outside of that, we're always trying to make connections in this particular project. The pre-workshop, as Sam, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. We really got the existing conditions. We started developing some big ideas, and those ideas are out there, the framework. They can certainly change, and they're already starting to change with the developers that have come and talked to us. So we're actually starting to make changes to that, but at least conceptually, we're sticking to what we came up with. So we're at the workshop, and we're going to refine those plans over the next month and a half. And we'll post those online, a lot of this information. Please be a participant. If you see something that is a red flag, let us know, because we will make corrections if there are valid arguments on that. So the principles that we're following are mixed use and diversity, mixed housing, gentle density. And why do I say gentle density? If we're not going to have 200 units per acre like New York, or 50 units per acre like San Francisco or Chicago, it just wouldn't work here. It's not what we're built for. So we're talking anywhere starting at a baseline of about 8 units per acre, which then starts to handle transit up to 25, 30 units per acre in those core areas of the mixed use areas where we can do that. And then that connectivity, as I pointed out, is so important. Multimodal, which we'll talk about in a couple minutes, and then the sustainability. Every project that I've done, and I learned this when I first moved to Atlanta. There's a project built in the 20s called Ansley Park, and they conserved all of their drainage system, their swales. So that's where all the drainage goes. Well, that makes so much sense. So we always try to save the green fingers. We just designed a city in Atlanta, Georgia, and it's literally a city. There's over 20 million square feet of office housing and so forth. But we kept all those green fingers coming into this city, so it's a different concept for a city. We want to make sure we do the same thing here, preserve that, so that is a greater sustainability, better water quality, and so forth. So those principles, as you can see, they fall into the build successful neighborhoods, create job prosperity, promote social and racial equity, improve transportation networks, and protect environments. So each one of those is tied to one of those, or most all of those. We love mixed use communities. Normally you'll have commercial on the bottom, and it'll either be apartments or office. I would love to see more for sale product on those, but it's very hard to get financing for that type of product. So normally it's more apartments. So we have that, and then you have all this people that can walk to it. The mix of housing is that this is Harbortown, this top piece here. These were great little 18-foot wide by 45-foot deep, carport on the side. So they saved money. They didn't spend $25,000 to build a garage, but they put that $25,000 into making the house. And those initially sold for $148,000, or about $450,000 now, but when they first were built. And then some flats are great to have. So we try to provide that diversity in housing. The density, this is downtown Woodstock. Right in the downtown Woodstock, we're getting about 30 units per acre. The whole project is about, I think it shows up in a minute, about 12 units per acre. The first phase, the second phase is 20 units per acre. The city was so excited about the project. And so it's always about net or gross density, more connections with the neighborhoods, collective open space, mixed use, greater support of retail, and greater entertainment zones. So that's that connectivity. It reduces isolation, reduces traffic congestion, greater transportation safety, flexibility, and greater opportunities. One of the things we've discovered over the years, instead of having a cul-de-sac, we create rambles. We'll have alley-loaded product, and you put some green space in the back, and the only people that are in the rambles are the people that live there, are driving to their garage. And we found out that a number of families will set up playgrounds in the back of the rambles, or they'll have barbecues back there, and they meet in the back, and so all the houses in that area get to know each other. So it's a real neat concept that's developed. So that's our sort of a cul-de-sac answer to the cul-de-sac.
Thank you. All right, so I'm going to hit on a little of the transportation aspects a little bit more. We've hinted around a lot of these things already, but I'll kind of explain a little more. So there we go. Up top, you see kind of that traditional loop and cul-de-sac that we've been talking about layout. And then below that is somewhat of a more gridded network. So as Tom was saying, connectivity is all about the future. And when we lack connectivity and in a lot of cul-de-sacs, we're not really thinking about the future. So a few things that cul-de-sacs kind of prohibit are density, because you see like a lot of these shapes, we get these funny shaped lots, which don't help us promote density. And we also have these kind of indirect routes to get places, which really prohibits multimodal use as well. People aren't going to walk as far, people aren't going to ride as far, but when we have this gridded network, it makes things shorter, but it also gives us redundancy in the network, which one can help kind of spread out traffic, let the system kind of hit an equilibrium with traffic, I guess. And also think about like servicing for fire or police. When we have this redundancy, when we have these more direct routes, we can provide those safety aspects. And a few things, so like this is shown as kind of more of a traditional grid, especially right in here. And if you'll look at the plans that we have outside, those often have this kind of altered grid where we'll have some more curves. And so we're still putting those traffic calming aspects in there, but without taking away the connectivity that it provides. Another part of connectivity, I guess, is where Sam touched on with connecting to transit. And while a lot of these sites are going to be hard to connect to transit, we really want to do the best we can to create a layout that does encourage that in the future, which kind of leads us into multi-mobility as well. Why is that important? So transit, for instance, is a part of multi-mobility, as are pedestrians and bicycles. And it's important that we're providing a network that serves all users. And so it also sometimes comes up of multi-mobility. Well, that means that you're just serving pedestrians and cyclists. But personal vehicles are still included in that. And so when we start looking at, everything is in this area, you don't have to take as many trips. Well, that might be trips you don't have to take outside. We're not saying that no one's going to drive and that we're not accounting for that, but more of some of those trips might now be walking or biking. So that's being considered. The shift in transportation equity, a lot of the underserved communities previously have relied more heavily on these alternative modes of traffic and not necessarily having a personal vehicle. So providing these other transportation options helps promote that equity. And then finally, encouraging an active lifestyle and providing those active transportation opportunities. Not only is that great for everyone, but also it helps create that community and that sense of belonging, seeing people more. And all of those things kind of really help lead to just better living experiences for everyone. So that kind of hits on a lot of the transportation stuff. And I'll hand it back over.
One quick story. I still live in Atlanta, but I lived on what's called the Beltline. Has anybody heard of the Beltline? And the Beltline's very cool, and I lived there 8 years, and it connected when it was the old railroad. It was a 22-mile railroad that rings Atlanta, and so they made it into a 14-foot wide path system, and you can go from my neighborhood, Virginia Highland, over to Inman Village, and there's a bunch of neighborhoods in between. And I could get there on a bike in about 5 minutes. And they had this on TV all the time, where somebody'd be in a car and try to beat them over there, and it'd take 25, 30 minutes for them to make the same trip. So it really connected all these great communities. And then I lived 2 miles from work, and so I bought me an electric assisted bike, and I could be to work in 11 minutes which is only 2 miles, but if I drove, it was 15 to 20 minutes. So it was, it was a no-brainer to just get on the bike every day and take the path to work. So that's where multimodal really starts to work. We're going to look at a few neighborhoods. This is an Atlanta project that we did and started on 205. It's about 30 acres. It was a concrete batch plant. There was not a tree, anything in this area, and nothing surround this area except one little neighborhood called Ormwood Park. And we reknitted this project back into Ormwood Park. But this has cost over $1 billion in new buildings throughout this, and is one of the most popular areas in Atlanta now, which had been totally ignored for years and years and years. So we're very proud of this project, and this shows you the sustainability. We have this became the detention, so it fills up with water on a heavy rain, but it's also a playground for the kids, and there's a water feature there. We have mixed use of housing, a lot of connectivity through this project. This street right there is called Kennedy Boulevard. You could, when we first started the project, you could stay in that for hours and there wouldn't be a car. Today it's heavily trafficked. And I know people complain about traffic, but you know who doesn't complain? The retailers. They love it. They want traffic there because they see their stores and people end up stopping there. So there's times when congestion makes a little sense. This is a project in your state, Norton Commons. Again, it's a great project, and it has the multimodal transportation in their area. They have mixed diversity. This is apartments and retail above it, some office space. Their main office is right there. This really works well, and this is in the interior of the project, so they had to build a lot of rooftops before this really became successful, but that's patience. If you have the patience, you'll ultimately be able to have the rooftops on there. Visualizing density is another, we're going to look at a couple projects. Norton Commons is about 6.5 units per acre. They're made up of single-family, multifamily townhouse. They've now started adding apartments, so that density will go up some on this. This is Glenwood Park, the one we did. We have about 12.5 units per acre on that project. Is single-family, multifamily apartments, townhomes, all sorts of different types of housing. And then Manchester, which is a very small project. This is the first phase. That is less than 1 acre, so 0.96 acres. There's 21 units per acre. A single-family detached, and townhouse product. And those are selling for $800,000, $900,000. No garage in them, but they're really very popular. So you can, if you have a place that's built in high quality architecture, it's going to do well. And then the total project is right in here, and that came out to about 15 units per acre. So Lexington, your Beaumont Central, you have that much larger house. It's funny, in some of the cities, southern cities, we're starting to take these larger houses and convert them to four units, or my wife and I just moved back with her parents. We converted a townhouse into 2 apartments so they can age in place, and we're starting to see that happen. It's incredible how much is happening in the country, and so people are starting to convert these larger units, if the zoning allows it, to 2plexes or 4plexes. But right now that's only 3 units per acre. The Chillersburg Hayes is about 7 units per acre, smaller lots on that one. And then the Walnut Creek is 8 units per acre on that area. And then when you get into the older developments in your area, which we love this area, is the Kenwick is about 8 units per acre, and that's going to be our starting density. So that gives you a feel of what we're trying to accomplish as we go through this project. Our sweet spot, we use this transect. The natural is a T1, which is parks and so forth, and then T is your rural areas that you have. And you can have a T1 and a T6. For instance, Central Park in New York is a T1, and then all the housing phases is that T6. So they can intermingle. But we're looking to have it the T3, T4, and T5, where you have the 8 units will be in this area, and then you build up your density as you build up into more of the urban center. So with that, we're going to go through the different components of your area, but the initial concept shows the grouping of mixed use, the group intended densities, the street network, open space, water, and unbuildable areas. And again, you'll see that on the charts out when we're outside and talking to you. So I'm going to let Sam go walk you through those.
Okay, so I'll walk through these fairly quickly because I know people have different interests in different ones. So in some cases, it's better to talk through it out at the boards. But I want to give you the highlights of some of these. So I think what's important to remember, and like we've said, is these areas are really big. They're much bigger than we think. Even the smallest of the areas, in any other part of Kentucky, these would be towns unto themselves. So when we think about that, we need to, it's really important to keep that in mind as, not being so much just, a continuation of suburbia, but of these having to be sort of their own standalone places. So, we had talked about this is the one area where it's great because we get access to two main roads. So, we're kind of pushing a sort of boulevard product or avenue, through the neighborhood. We're again kind of working our way around some of those potential sinkhole karst features, so potential non-buildable areas, but also thinking about starting to get a neighborhood center right up there at this really important corner, which becomes a gateway, really your first gateway that you see if you're coming from the airport or from Keeneland in along Man o' War Boulevard into the city. The other thing that's important to note is, getting some of those, like we had said, some connections into the neighborhood, which you're kind of not seeing there, but that will get more fine-grained, is also how we start to connect into the bicycle and pedestrian network that already exists in Beaumont. And then also connecting into how we make those connections into these two big park products, so that we're sure that, these folks are using what we've got out there, what we're spending all of the money for, right? Next, we're looking at Area 2. So this is, again, the Winchester Road and where Polo Club comes in. One thing that was really important to us on this one, like I had said, is there's, this existing community here along Hume Road. And so this is the only space where we really have that, where we have a full neighborhood that's being brought into the, potential expansion areas. So what we tried to do is we're trying to really push our main road out and around and away from them, and circulating it out along the edge, and then building up. Really, in this area, we're getting 2, maybe even a third, depending on how it looks. Neighborhood centers. This is a huge area. So that's a lot of households that we can fit out there. And then also you'll see in all of these showing those potential future connection points that would really end up looking like a stub street up against the edge of the boundary. But so that we don't end up happening, we've learned that lesson. We want to be able to connect in the future, the 50 years down the road, the 70 years down the road, and make sure that, if we do end up growing that way, that we haven't, backed ourselves into a corner, literally. Area 3, so again, Athens Boonesboro, Brenda Cowan. Like I said, this is an area where we're really hampered by this kind of hard edge that's being formed here. So we're having to really push the circulation network and make sure that we're getting that connected, altered grid in there, so that people have a lot of different entry and exit points onto Athens Childsburg, because that's their only point of access. We're showing these two very pie in the sky possible underpasses or overpasses of 75, but those are very expensive and many years down the road, if ever. So we need to figure out how we can move people, and particularly potential transit in and through, to circulate in these areas. We definitely see a lot of potential of, having greater density or greater gentle density up along Athens Boonesboro, particularly playing off of the kind of energy coming from the soccer district, the new soccer district, I would say. Again, cane break. And so, this, a lot of people question why this area in particular was brought in. But the idea is to really start showing that we could someday connect Cane Break Drive all the way from Athens Boonesboro over to Todd's Road. And the idea of that is just to provide options for people to move through our city. If you've been on Hayes Boulevard at peak times in the morning, in the evening, you know that's really the only way to cut from Todd's Road over to Athens Boonesboro unless you go all the way back to Man o' War. So this would provide another outlet. But in addition to that, we've got a pretty big chunk of land here that kind of sits at the very end of Polo Club. So it's sort of the natural progression of development that's coming off of the successive, how many people are living off of Polo Club, and Andover, I would say, and moving and providing, some more housing opportunity here. And then this is one spot where you'll see a little bit of this purple color, and so that is industrial or light industrial that could be an inclusion into that Blue Sky Parkway area. And last but not least is Area 5. Soccer is here. So just thinking about making those connections across to Area 3, and then connections across up into Cane Break, and really sort of pushing, when you don't really have any neighbors down here, especially here in the corner, how can we push density as much as possible and really start to up those number of housing units at different types of housing that I said, like we were looking for, the variety of housing.
So put on your seatbelts. I'm going to try to get through this pretty quickly. We are at the end. So the next, what we refine the concept plan. This is the plan that's in Tulsa that we've done, and you can see we really went out of our way to create an incredible amount of green space. There's a water feature on this particular land that is astounding. That used to be an old mine pit, but it's just, you have to see it to believe it. So, but we have lots of connectivity throughout this whole site. It crosses all through even through the park in a couple areas. So it's by making smaller lots, we're able to get all this green space and preserve the natural features, and that's sort of what we're going for with yours. But so what is the type of housing that would fit into a project like this? And we've had a lot of discussion yesterday, the home builders were in, and you have currently a limited amount of type of projects or products that's being built, and it might be good to introduce some product that I think would be popular in this area. And again, we're finding that we've just started doing this in the Tulsa area, and they're very, very, very conservative in that area. But it turns out there was this demand that they didn't know existed in there, that they're starting to sell these units, sell out on their units. And so these are single family, small lots. A typical lot is anywhere from 70 foot wide to 150 foot deep. That's a normal conventional lot. We're looking at 50 to sometimes 70, 35 by 70. So they're smaller lots, but they're saying you get the same square footages. That you're just going a little bit. You might have 3 stories versus 2 stories or 1 story in here, and we will also have the 100 foot deep lots and so forth. So we're not going to eliminate them, but we're going to give more variety and more choice within that area. Then the townhouse product, again, I don't think you have a lot of townhouse product here. When I first moved to Atlanta in 1992, there was hardly any townhouse product. Now I'd say there's probably 30% is up to townhouse, and they're very popular. Sound attenuation has been worked out, so people don't mind living in them and actually like living in them, and families are living in them. And a lot of these designs will have backyards or sometimes we have a front yard for them. We put a 12-foot front yard, so there is some yard space, and a lot of these times they'll face green spaces like this. We say garden style apartments, but they're really not garden style, because what we do is we cover the breezeways up and give them doors and then windows. And it's not necessarily conditioned space, but they look more of like an urban building. And we also give them streets. They run along the streets, parking in the back. Sometimes they're double loaded, sometimes they're single loaded, depending on the density. But apartments are going to be very important. And most of the time, you can only afford to do it without parking garages because they're so expensive. So they have to be surface parks. So we have to figure that into the mix. This has become just everywhere. If you build a cottage court, they're very, very popular. I can't tell you, we can't build or design these fast enough, and they can't get built enough. And most people that are getting this are the baby boomers, because they're about 1,200 square foot. They're 2 bedrooms, 2 bath, and so the family can come. They're usually on 1 floor, but they face this court, and everybody gets to know each other because there's a porch on it, and it's really a great place to age in place. And then they're within the same neighborhoods as everybody else within that walking community. The other one is the ADUs, I'm sorry, accessory dwelling units, which is just a garage with a living unit over the top of it. Again, those are becoming more and more prevalent throughout the areas, and they're great rental and workforce type housing. What we've looked at is the 2-plex, the quadplex, and the 6-plex. These are great units. You can put them on small areas. They look like homes. I mean, they're designed to look like homes and so forth. We love these things, and this is some examples of what those might look like. Some that we've designed, and some that have been there built in the 20s. So we really like seeing these, and we don't congregate them one area. We spread them throughout the project, so they feel like they're part of the community. When you get to the single-family type houses, this one is a 28-foot wide lot by 70-foot deep, but they go up, as you can see, to much larger lots. So again, we're just trying to get a variety of housing that you might not find here. You might all be up towards this area right here, most of this, but we'd like to see some of this introduced as well. And then the townhouse product, again, this would be for a little courtyard in the back, parking. Sometimes these are carports versus garage, again, saving the money, putting all the money into to the townhouse, or you have a garage. A lot of townhouses, especially the wider ones, if they're wider, there's a master down, and some are putting elevators in. You least leave a place where you can put a residential elevator in. That price has come down considerably in the last 5 years. And then you have the missing middle, which is the duplex, the 6-plex, and the 4-plex. So these are a lot of missing middle type, would be more rental type project. And so the final thoughts really are refine design concepts for each site. Advanced design concepts accomplish the following: protect the environment, save natural features, plan the future connections, and some sort of a grid system, whether it's modified or a total grid. Plan on the neighborhood connections that allow for live, work, and play, and provide housing. And the last thought, if any of you live on Hume Road, if we had some yesterday, we don't want that road touched, or any road like that. If there's other roads in this study area that you feel that reach that same level, we're going out to try to protect them. We don't want to see those roads destroyed. And that's why we worked very hard, as Sam pointed out, to get the road systems away from it and not impact these historical roads that are so beautiful in that. So thank you so much for having us. We are very, very excited to continue to work on this project, and we can now meet out in the lobby to go over the plans and any questions that you have. So thank you so much.